Greetings, Exile. It's me again, the guy who keeps making off meta trash builds which nobody asks for. I am back with another abomination of a build. This time, it's a blast from my past. Which, other than me, only a few brave fools have attempted even in the past as well as the present. Despite the skill receiving major changes to its mechanic and damage scaling, it's still one of the most obscure skills. Blade Trap of Laceration is the transfigured version of Blade Trap, which is particularly good for a bleed build since it now has inherently faster bleeding and much higher base attack damage scaling with the changes introduced in 3.26. It can now also be used with one-handed axes. Back in 3.25 when I made the build, the best weapon type for it was daggers, as they have very high base critical strike chance and the option for the 100% more bleeding enchant, making them perfect for a perfect agony setup. But now, with that enchant no longer available and not wanting to repeat the same build again, I have opted for the non-crit route instead. This time I'm using axes since they can reach very high damage values which scale bleed extremely well. So let's take a look on how the skill works. You throw a trap, and when the trap activates, it spins 2 copies of your weapon in a circle. Each copy hits the target once. So if you are using Crimson Dance to apply bleed stacks, it will apply 2 bleed stacks per trap. That means if 4 traps activate and hit the target at the same time, 8 bleed stacks are applied instantly. This makes the traps a perfect fit for Crimson Dance. However, it is better to use bleed aggravation until you have enough trap throwing speed to set up at least 4 traps very quickly. Now that you know how the skill works, let's talk about why I chose Gladiator as my ascendancy. Gladiator offers bleed explosions through gratuitous violence, which are great for this build since single traps do not provide much clear on their own, making the build feel terrible to play. Gratuitous violence completely fixes that issue. We also gain easy block scaling through Determined Survivor and lucky block chance through More Than Skill. Most importantly, we get Jagged Technique, which causes any bleeding we inflict to be aggravated. This triples our damage output, and even if we are using Crimson Dance, we can still use War of Attrition for boss fights, which straight up doubles our damage in longer encounters. Next, let us take a look at the gear I'm using to scale bleed on this build. Starting with my weapon, Jack the Axe, which is a classic and one of the most budget-friendly options for any melee bleed build. On top of giving 20% more damage with bleeding, it also provides up to 2,000 life regenerated per second based on nearby bleeding enemies through Thirst for Blood skill. For this build, I am currently stacking up to 7 frenzy charges. I get 3 by default, 1 from the passive tree, 1 from my amulet anoint, 1 from a glove corruption, and 1 from Olesia's Delight unique belt. This unique belt is especially important because it converts all frenzy charges into affliction charges. These affliction charges grant 8% more ailment damage and increase the effect of non-damaging ailments such as shock by 8% per stack. Now, since this belt converts all frenzy charges into affliction charges, we lose the original benefit of 4% more damage per frenzy charge. To fix that issue, I use Ralakesh's Impatience Boots. These boots give us the benefits of having maximum frenzy charges all the time, completely negating the downside of the belt. Lastly, I am also using Usurper's Penance unique helmet. This helmet grants faster bleeding and adds damage over time multiplier for bleeding per frenzy charge, significantly boosting our overall bleed damage. One more thing, since this is a trap build, you cannot directly leech mana, so we rely on enduring mana flasks, and to make sure we never run out of flask charges, we allocate the replenishing remedies node with the help of an impossible escape jewel for Supreme Ego. Now let's talk about the thing I am sure most of you are curious about, the Mercenary for this build. He is an infamous strength and dex mercenary who uses pride, causing nearby enemies to take a lot more physical damage. He also has a skill called Insight, which allows him to generate 3 frenzy charges for himself and his allies every 10 seconds while in combat. And since I have Olesia's belt, these are converted into affliction charges. By using the charge mastery for 100% increased duration, we can make sure these charges never fall off. And lastly, and most importantly, he uses Rallying Cry, which provides me a lot of flat physical damage. significantly increasing my bleed damage. To take full advantage of this, I have given him Ul Netol's Kiss. This unique axe grants him high physical damage and also allows him to apply the vulnerability curse on enemies he hits. Since Rallying Cry provides flat damage based on the caster's main hand weapon, I gain a massive damage boost whenever I am under its effect. To push this even further, I have rolled increased Warcry effect on most of his gear, amplifying the damage I gain from his Rallying Cry even more. I do believe that only the infamous Mercenary has access to the Insight skill. So if you cannot find the infamous version, do not worry. You can simply use a replica Farul's Fur to generate affliction and endurance charges. Just get Aspect of the Cat on any rare gear you have. I would suggest putting it on one of your rings. To add Aspect of the Cat to your gear, you will need Farul, the First of the Plains. You can add Aspect to any rare item using this beast. This is all I can do to provide you guys with a functional budget version of the build. So, before we wrap up, let me tell you my future plans for this build. The first thing I'm going to do is craft an end-game bleed axe and shield. I will also craft an even higher damage two-handed axe for my Mercenary so I can gain even more damage from his Rallying Cry. I will be adding Replica Farul's Fur and a Purity of Elements Watcher's Eye to the build. I also plan to add rare physical and trap cluster jewels by revamping the skill tree quite heavily. I will purchase 2 Strangle Gasps, one for myself to anoint multiple Frenzy Charge and Aura Effect nodes, and one for my Mercenary to anoint Warcry Buff Effect nodes. I have already crafted most of the things I mentioned, so you guys can expect the next and final update for this alongside the full build guide within a week. You can find the leveling POB alongside the current POB in the video description below. If you like this kind of obscure off-meta trash builds, make sure to like, subscribe, and even ring that notification bell to stay updated. You can also join our Discord server or follow me on Twitch to stay even more updated. As always, thanks for watching, Exile. But before we go, here is a glimpse of what you can expect from the final version of the build.